How's it going, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crypto Clout. I am your host, FaZe Crypto, and welcome to a video about Digibyte. Of course, we'll be discussing a multitude of different aspects in the cryptocurrency space, including Bitcoin currently coming in at $9,111 at the current time of recording this video. Definitely, we do have some interesting things to talk about, so not much time, so we'll just jump right into it. Digibyte block rewards are set in a way to decrease by a bit more than 1% in a month, and it will touch zero by the end of 2035. This system, they feel, will provide for stability and security. This is the Digibyte equivalent of a halving in a way, and also, of course, avoid supply shock. Jared tweeted, happy Bitcoin halving. He further nostalgically expressed that when he first started messing with BTC code in 2012, it led to DGB, in the top 30. He stated that he did not do it to avoid, of course, recognition of any hidden agenda. He stated that he was a tinkerer at heart, but I think that the Digibyte approach to the sort of having idea, is interesting, and in its own way, does have its pros and cons, when it comes to the way that something like Bitcoin approaches the halving. But I would make the argument that the Digibyte method of doing it is much more superior, and of course the end result is going to be the same come 2035, or whatever the year was that it said that so it's going to be the same. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're going to be seeing entirely new perception of the cryptocurrency world, in the future, when Bitcoin mining and all these other aspects of the cryptocurrency space will be a completely different animal from what they were. I mean, you talk about miners getting these rewards of cut in half, definitely does cut out a lot of the smaller, a lot of the profitability of the smaller mining operations. And I mean, it is definitely something to pay attention to, in particular when we talk about something like these water or like big sort of operations where they use the residual energy that is that otherwise wouldn't have been made use of. These big power plants that have areas where there's like massive amounts of energy that can be harnessed. And in the past paradigm, the pre World War II, sort of post World War II way that the world was acting, the dependency upon natural resources like oil and all these other things were certainly the basically key points of the negotiations that would be happening between nations. It was who could move fossil fuels and who can harness all these other aspects of those sort of oil, but now we're reaching the new era of the world economy, which is computing power, and I think that right now, especially while we're seeing people locked up in their houses due to the current situation with the health, the World Health sort of response that we've seen, take it or leave it, criticize it or not, the fact of the matter is that at this point, the world powers need to basically hop on board, in an opportunistic fashion, to some degree, and many people have pointed this out. But regardless of what your own personal opinion might actually be on this paradigm shift, the fact of the matter is that the new leaders of it are going to be the ways of looking at Bitcoin as like a store of energy in a form of obviously these are all I think Warren Buffett was talking about this as well. And even people smarter than Warren Buffett, we're talking about how the stock market is movement of power, and then when we talk about Bitcoin, it's basically a element that sits and is always available to absorb power, and especially when we talk about economic volatility sort of being the new normal, it is definitely interesting to talk about something like Digibyte in this context. And I mean, many people might talk about, Digibyte's current price, but I don't get distracted by the current prices that much when I'm looking at the technology. When I'm trying to think in four-dimensional sense and imagine where these things are going to go, this article right here, Bitcoin, of course, price chart, fractal seen in 2019 hints at 14K within months. I mean, I don't think that this is anything out of the ordinary. I mean, last summer, you'll all remember we saw a similar thing happening right around the same time. Bitcoin if you really step back from it, and I think people who watch Bitcoin often are never really surprised, especially these past 2 or 3 years, ever since the 2017 all-time highs that we saw of Bitcoin, the early part of 2018, then 19, and now 2020. It kind of has been a similar pattern, and I talk about this in the live stream, more or less when I do the technical analysis part of the show where we actually go into detail, and it is quite predictable, and plenty of people have taken full advantage of this, just trading a full Bitcoin when it's buying low and selling high and being patient and not trying to become rich overnight. So it is interesting. We got this right here though. Bitcoin steady near 9K. Well, now of course this is a bit old, but now past 9K, of course, as Trump touts gift of negative interest rates, which is interesting. Bitcoin has ended a 4-day long, losing trend and is trading steady around 9K amid rising speculation the U.S. could eventually adopt negative interest rates. The top cryptocurrency by market value rose nearly 3% on Tuesday, having suffered losses in the preceding 4 days, the longest daily losing run in over 2 months. Definitely interesting, and it does definitely speak to looking at Bitcoin as or even crypto in general, as blockchain, as sort of a economic powerhouse and absorber of that sort of economic energy, moving money, the illusion of the idea of money, at least from one hand to another, really does fundamentally go to the heart and soul of a lot of the major flaws that are indicative of the past paradigm of actual the perception of a dollar, the perception of money in currency at its core, which is another reason why I would say, in evolving philosophy, in a more or less a realistic approach, would indeed view cryptocurrency as sort of just a natural evolution of how human beings perceive wealth transfer. And I think that we'll definitely be seeing projects like Digibyte emerging as key players, especially while we see many of these different variables on a worldwide scale getting that same wake-up call as people sort of start to understand the smoke and mirrors nature of money at its core. Now, of course, remember, this video is for entertainment, educational purposes only. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not your dad. Of course, remember, these are all just my opinions. So, remember, this is a high risk, high volatile space, and you need to make your own decisions when it comes to these things. But my opinion, is as follows. I'm very confident as we're watching blockchain. I mean, of course, people are going to bring up regulations. People are always going to be talking about the future of quantum computing and the various different breakthroughs that we see, and the 2008 sort of technology of Bitcoin and all these other things, which I can't ignore. I mean, they're things that are very debatable, and it's more of a wait and see. Nobody knows the answer, but something like the technologies that we're talking about, which is of course why I would point to something like Digibyte, in lieu of people who often criticize Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's a completely different animal. To any altcoin, I mean, we're all sort of in this together, but at the same time, we're not, because every single one is going to have a future all its own. But yeah, all that being said, make sure that you guys comment down below. Let us know what you think. I think this has been a pretty good video. I got to vent out a lot of my things that I, important topics that I wanted to discuss. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure that you subscribe and share this with everybody in the Digibyte community, and have a good one.